Brexit deadlock crisis as UK retaliates against EU's refusal to talk trade. David Davis and his team will keep their cards close to their chest by not disclosing which financial commitments the UK will honor, according to senior Whitehall sources. The UK's new hardline stance was agreed after EU negotiators made it clear that they have no plans to discuss a transitional deal on trade talks at this month's October European Council summit, despite Mrs May's generous offer to pay Euros 20 billion during a transitional period. The source told The Telegraph there won't be any political movement from the British side on the bill until the EU broadens its package to discuss transition in the future relationship, but said Britain would still look to hold technical talks on the bill. Relations between David Davis and his Brussels counterpart Michel Barnier appear to have deteriorated, and despite both parties describing last month's talks as constructive, both are stubbornly refusing to budge on any of the major stumbling blocks. Sources in Whitehall allegedly privately acknowledged that the deadlock will not be broken next week. EU sources told the paper Michel Barnier would not be satisfied with Britain's new approach and is set to demand sufficient progress on three major areas: the financial settlement, citizens' rights and Northern Ireland, before discussions move on to trade and transition. One source said 2 out of the 3 files is not acceptable. It is 3 out of 3 or nothing. You can expect him to be quite tough on that at the beginning of next week. Senior EU diplomats have alleged Brussels' decision not to move on to trade talks were cemented by Boris Johnson's public interventions on Brexit, which undermined confidence in the Prime Minister. European leaders are reportedly doubting Theresa May's ability to negotiate a good Brexit deal following her disastrous Conservative Party conference speech, in which she suffered a coughing fit, and a prankster thrust a P45 towards her in the middle of the address. A senior EU diplomat told The Telegraph the longer the unraveling continues in London, the less likely it is that Michel Barnier will ask for a relaxing of his mandate so he can talk about transition. No one can be sure if May can keep the promises she appeared to make in Florence. Meanwhile, German car companies were warned to prepare for the hardest possible Brexit amid reports the negotiations will revert back to square one when they reopen next week. British negotiators have apparently made it clear that Mrs May's concessions on cash and a transition, delivered in her Florence speech, are dependent on the EU agreeing to a comprehensive trade deal. That stance is unacceptable to Mr Barnier and the Commission, who have stuck rigidly to the phased mandate they were handed by the EU 27, which says there can be no blurring divorce issues in the future partnership. There have been suggestions that the member states, spooked by a lack of progress in the talks, could look to tweak those guidelines at this month's summit to provide the Frenchmen with more flexibility.